there's a lot of things that I could tell you today, but what's on my heart to tell you more than anything is, I'm a church guy. I really don't care pedigree-wise and that kind of thing, and I hope, my desire isn't to offend somebody. My heart is to draw people together, because there's way too much to do for us to worry about who gets credit and who gets the, overflow and all that kind of stuff. Just not necessary. And so today, what I'd like to talk to you about is a little bit of what Revive is, and what it would take, and how you can be a part. We're not here to sell you something. In fact, quite the opposite. We would bring something. Let me just explain just a little bit how Revive has worked in the past. There's a young man named Kyle Martin, and who God put it on his heart years ago as a younger man to go to a seminary after he had already completed his degree in sports administration. He had just gotten his first job, and God put it on his heart that he wasn't going to be doing that, and so he ended up going to seminary, and God told him that he was just to study revival. And years and years ago then, in his life, he's now 37, 38 years old, I think. He felt that God had told him to put up a tent in Dallas, Texas, when he was down there, and he didn't even know if he could, so he got the permission, started it up, and said, okay, God, I got a tent up, now what? And he said, I want you to invite pastors. Just want you to invite pastors together. And he began to invite pastors together, and what came out of that was, for 40 days they did that. And by the time it was done, there was over 200 pastors gathering under the tent in Dallas, and what started to happen out of that became something that there was a unity among people that they didn't know was there, and they started some just light evangelistic work. And this is, I just want to explain just a little bit of the morphing to you, because this is a ministry that has kind of morphed into something now that it wasn't somebody's strategy. It was the work of God working in somebody's heart. And so what has happened over the years, well, just put it this way. From there was somebody there that said, would you please come and do the same thing in Santa Fe, New Mexico? And so he said, I don't know what we're doing. They, sure, we'll come. And they went to Santa Fe, and somebody in Santa Fe invited them to Sedona, Arizona. And so they went to Sedona, Arizona, and there were some people vacationing there from Flint, Michigan, and they said, would you come up to Flint? And so they went up to Flint, Michigan, and from there they got invited, and now we've been into all these places of Seattle, Washington, Columbia, South Carolina, down in Charlotte, North Carolina, then let's see here, North Dakota, up in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, been down in Florida, then Tupelo, Mississippi. But in 2015, actually in 2014, Kyle got a call from somebody, and they always come by invitation, and this one was kind of unique. And the idea was that somebody always, there's somebody that invites, and that's where it has always been. But this was kind of different, because the guy that called him was Amish. And he said, would you consider coming to Indiana? We need revival among our people. And his name was Dennis Miller. And Kyle said, well, we'll pray about it. Well, the whole idea that I got involved with it was Kyle grew up in my hometown, and he was my paper boy. And so when he called me and said, Gordy, we've been invited to come to Indiana, and I just wondered what you think. I knew Kyle. I had known him most of his life, and God has had a major calling in his life. You saw it all the way through his junior high school stuff going on. And this is, let me just tell you a little bit about it. You know, he has a real God visitation in 4th grade. In middle school, he started a small organization which went on to high school, and he started a group called Lamps on a Stand, and it was in our Northridge High School, which is still going on today, called Raiders for Christ. In high school, he was a sports guy, and he was good basketball player, but he would tape up his ankles just so he could put a fish on his ankle so that he could proclaim that he was a Christian to anybody that wanted to know. That's the kind of guy this was. And I had lost track of him for a few years because he had moved to Dallas, Texas, and felt God had called him there. And so when he called to come back to Indiana, he was coming out of Minnesota. And I said, Kyle, you know me, I'm in. I want to see what God's doing. And you know, I had heard about Flint. My mom went up to Flint and different things. So they came to Indiana and started in January of 2015. And I don't know why you would start anything in January in northern Indiana, and especially if you decide you're going to go out on the streets. But that's what we did. And what typically happened was in any of these places, they go and they scout and they gauge what's there. And this is like a scout trip for us, okay? And they want to see what is the climate and what's the invitation and where are we at. And then they do some prep trips, and that's where they begin to come and they begin to share the vision and talk about what can happen and talk about schedule and see what churches will be involved. And then you have a couple nights where you're going to call the churches together and put on and invite them all to one location and say, okay, now let's get your people involved that will come, and we're going to begin training them in just simple evangelism. And you did that. So we did that for about 7 months actually in Indiana, different prep trips and scout trips and different things like that. And then you have your what we call our come and see nights, and that's where the church folks come. Well, then we started what is considered our 7 days on January 15th of 2015. And what that means is, and Jason will go over the schedule with you, but for 7 days solid, we meet in the morning and we go till the evening, but twice a day we form groups and we go out into the community. And there's simple evangelism tools. Guys, I don't care what your ideas of evangelism is, and I don't really care what you think Martinsville and these areas are here as far as open to the gospel. The reason that I am with Revive is because there is a hunger among people that is so real if somebody will come along and touch them instead of just inviting them into the doors of the church. And it is real. Lives are broken. People are needy. They're hungry. They desire somebody who will just tell them the truth and love them. And we find it everywhere we go. So let's put it this way. They came, we did 7 days. And what was different was every time they've gone to another one of the cities, they've always named it a city. Revive Twin Cities, Revive Charlotte, Revive Columbia, Revive Seattle, Revive Flint, Revive Sedona, all, just down there. They came to Indiana, they said part of the reason why they couldn't find a big city, but the other side was they just couldn't settle on it. They just absolutely couldn't settle on it. And finally, Kyle, when he was doing one of his prep trips, said that he just got frustrated, and he said, okay, and he hit the steering wheel of the van he was in and said, Revive Indiana. And he didn't even realize what God was speaking to him, because at that time, we really didn't have any plan for anything different. And yet, after 6 days of doing what Jason will explain to you, Kyle called his team in the room, which was about 10 people, and then 2 of us pastors. And he said, I really believe that God wants to do something very different in Indiana. And he said, I'm going to ask you to do something, and I'm just sincerely asking what you think of it. And he said, I believe God is reforming the model here in Indiana. And he wants us to be here for 52 days. And the model is out of Nehemiah's wall. He said he was going to build something, and we go. He says, what do you think? And I'm not, when it comes to the kingdom, guys, somebody has got to learn to take a risk. And, and it talks about John the Baptist and things that are going on. If we want to see our communities transformed, then we're going to have to step out and do some things that maybe are a little bit outside our comfort zone, but they're not outside the zone of what Christ did when he was here. And so we decided we was going to 52 days. And that means that every day we would meet and we would do what the schedule, and Jason will go over that. And it seems pretty crazy, and even look back at it, it seems crazy. But the thing that I will tell you this is, we saw God move in ways that we have never, ever. I've seen things happen now And one of the struggles I've had as a pastor is I love church. I love people. I don't have any problem getting with people. But when I see things in the scriptures that I have to defend somehow, like, you know what? I will do more for you than you can ask or imagine. You ever read anything like that in the Bible? What's happened? And that's what I'm saying. I want to see God do those things in my life because He said He would. And so I've got to figure out what it is that's holding me back from seeing those things. And what I began to see was, and this is just how it happened, and there's no formula. We began to just say, this is what's going on. Churches, come on, let's just get together and do this. And look, in our area, Elkhart County up there in northern Indiana, we don't have any huge churches. And we started in a church called Maple City Chapel. And it holds about 350, 400 in its main sanctuary. But it used to be an old Walmart building, so out in the outside of that, there's a whole other section that holds another 300, 400 people. Well, great. You know, we started out and we had 400, 500 people just to start with. By the middle of the first week, we were 800. When we announced that we were going 52 days, let me just say this, guys and lady. We went from January 15th to March 4th. We began to have to put people in rooms off to the side and stream it in there. And by the time we came to March 4th, we had 4 venues, and we had over 10,000 people that gathered on March 4th of 2015. And we sent out thousands of people into the streets just to talk to people after training them on what they could do. And we watched people get baptized by the hundreds because they were giving their lives to Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, then, after that, we ended our 52 days and didn't even know what we were exactly going to do, but we knew that something was about Revive Indiana. And Kyle said, we're going to take 30 days off and then we're coming back for 7 days, and I believe God's going to give us a plan. And this is really vital because I want you guys to hear this part of it. They came back and it was on a Wednesday morning because we have prayer at 7 o'clock in the morning every morning of them days. And so this was going to be another solid week. So at 7 o'clock in the morning we had a prayer meeting, and we met at Maple City Chapel. And in the middle of that prayer meeting, one of the pastors from Napanee, Indiana, Tom Sheeper, stood up and said, Kyle, I believe God just spoke to me. I believe I have a plan. And Kyle said, come up here. And he said, would you put the Indiana flag up on the screen? And so they got on Google, you know, got the Indiana flag, threw it up on the screen. He goes, you see what's in the middle? It's the torch. And out of that torch comes 7 rays. I believe there's going to be 7 key cities in the state of Indiana that you're supposed to go to, and it's going to go somewhere in Indiana. And before that week was over, we already had scheduled a date in Kokomo. Before that week was over, we already had scheduled Bloomington. We ended up going to Kokomo for a week. And let me just tell you what happens in people's hearts. Guys, some of you have been pastoring a while, some of you might be newer in pastoring, some of you might be in places where you don't have a whole lot of expectation. I want to blow your doors off. That's what I really want to do. Not because somebody can bring it to you, but because we can show you how, and there will be people here with you to walk you through, people who have done it, and they will come by the busloads. Why? Because when they've seen it happen in other places, they want to be a part of it wherever it goes. When we went to Kokomo on the first Sunday night, the kickoff night, this was just a couple weeks after the one in Indiana stopped the last 30 days. Unbeknownst to anybody else, people had chartered 5 buses from northern Indiana, ended up filling up the whole sanctuary where we were supposed to have our meeting at the church. And so when the Kokomo people came, there wasn't any place to sit. And Kyle said, what are you guys doing? Get out of here. And he made them all get up and go out so the Kokomo people could sit down. They ended up being, and it was the coolest thing, I got pictures of it. They opened the side doors and the people were standing around the windows because they wanted to be a part of the meeting. And when's the last time you've seen that at a church? And yet I will say this, there's a pastor up there, his name's Phil Russell. He's from Christian Heritage Church in Kokomo, Indiana. You can call him, you can talk to him. This stuff still goes on in Kokomo. But we started having, every morning we had breakfast too, by the way. And his wife got things around for breakfast on the Monday morning and the Tuesday morning. And she started remarking, because she said, you know what, this is crazy, because I didn't know how many to expect. She says, I thought I would just get a little breakfast, and then I saw how many people were here, and I'm going, oh God, what am I going to do for breakfast here? And they have a fellowship hall, you know. And so she got 5 gallons of orange juice, 5 gallons of milk, and put them in the cooler, and she's got eggs, and she's got biscuits and gravy stuff. And you can talk to this lady, she'll talk to you. She said, here's what started to happen. She said there were so many people, and I'd go in there and I'd get a couple gallons of orange juice and I'd put them out on the table, and she said we'd get those things. I'd go back there and she goes, there's 5 more gallons of orange juice in my cooler, and I don't even know how that happened. She saw food appear. They had eggs in their freezer. They don't have any idea why. I don't care what people think. I was there. I've been in 18 cities in Indiana now. We went from Kokomo. Let me just tell you one other story. We went to Kokomo and they said, what would be impossible in Kokomo? They said, I'll tell you right now what's impossible in Kokomo. Get into the Chrysler plant. 13,000 employees. By Wednesday the first week, we're in the Chrysler plant. They are still having meetings with their chaplains in the Chrysler plant at the break table. We've seen hundreds of people come to the Lord in the Chrysler plant, and GM even heard about it and asked them to come over there in the transmission plants of Kokomo, Indiana. Check out the stories. I was there. We went from there down to Bloomington. We went from Bloomington to South Bend. When we were at South Bend, we were in a pastor's meeting, because we have pastor's meetings throughout the week to keep people walking together. There was a black pastor there from, I don't know how they let him in. He was from Niles, Michigan. So, I mean, it's illegal to have you in Indiana. And, but he was in the back of the room, and I was sitting about 5 feet from him. And he was in the meeting, and he goes, Kyle, I think I know the rest of your plan. He goes, okay, what's that? He goes, can you put the flag back up there? And he says, no, there's not a screen here. He goes, well, I'll tell you. They ended up going and getting the flag. He said, you see the 7 rays? What else is there? 19 stars. We're the 19th state. Kyle goes, oh, I can see where this is going. You're never going to let us go home. He said, no. You go home after 7 rays. The 7 rays is going to touch the 19 stars. Time to Revive had been to all them other cities, but when they came to Indiana, it's the first time they ever talked about having missionaries. And people began to say, I mean, just like Jason. Jason is a fully supported missionary because he's fundraised from churches and from people who know him, who have a reputation. I've got him from my congregation. They will go all over the state. They're working with Time to Revive. We've been to Texas. We've been all over. And why? Because this is something God is doing now that I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. And so from South Bend, we went over to Northwest. We spent 2 weeks in East Chicago and Gary and Valparaiso and in those areas. And then from there, we was down in Terre Haute. And from Terre Haute, if you're counting, then we end up 7 in Fort Wayne. We ended up spending 3 weeks in Fort Wayne. Had just a glorious time and watched people get baptized. Stories that you can't imagine. You can get on reviveindiana.org and go to YouTube and put in Revive Indiana. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos on there of them just going out into the street or watching the baptisms and doing that kind of stuff. Why? Because it happened every day. It can happen right here in Martinsville. Because you see, they went home then. Then we started, some of us who were just in the state, and God has just put me in this. I still pastor, I'm fully in my church, and yet they have allowed me to say, we believe that you're supposed to be a part of this, you go. I've got 2 other pastors in the church, we're okay. And so I go and do this all over the state. So I've been in 11 cities beside the 7 now. And here's what's there. As soon as Time to Revive heard about 19 stars, this is what they did. They said, we believe that's the word of the Lord. These are the tools. The Bible and the wristband. Okay? They believed it so strongly. Kyle's dad has an Ace Hardware in Middlebury, Indiana. They put 19 pallets in the Ace Hardware warehouse. Every one of those pallets have 1,000 Bibles and 2,000 wristbands and 52 storybooks, because as soon as the city says yes, that pallet gets delivered and we come ready, supplied, and it costs you nothing. Why? Because if the word of the Lord comes, church, we're going to have to figure out that that's what we're supposed to do. All you've got on your plate today is you've got to figure out is if this is something that you're interested in. Because I will tell you this, the same group of people that went to Kokomo from northern Indiana, we've been in cities all over this state, and there would be people coming from Muncie. They'll come from anywhere around that we've been to. Some of them will come here, and some of them will stay overnight in your houses if you'll let them. And they'll be here, and they'll start at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they'll stay all day, and they'll evangelize in your streets, and they'll bring people to your churches. And we've done it in every city we've been in. And that's what God is doing. Because we've had our doors open a long time. Let me just tell you something. They're not coming. We've got our regulars. We've got that all figured out. But we're not gaining those who need Jesus Christ desperately. They need somebody to come and get them and tell them that God loves them and we love them and we'll walk with them. We listen to their story and we see what they're going to do. So that's what Revive is. And so if you think it's just craziness and all that kind of stuff, I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to convince you. I'm a witness. I was here. I see it in the streets, and I've been to every one of these cities. Been down to Evansville, all the way up in anywhere on the state. And I will keep going, and we've still got a few pallets left. So that's what I'm here to tell you. Jason will take you through the rest.
Obviously, we're passionate about what God's done in our lives, and like we said, he was a witness. I was a witness. I worked, you heard me, I worked up here in Martinsville for a while, worked in Bloomington. But when this came through my hometown, I had 7 days, and at the end of the 7 days, I'll give you just a brief story that I'm going to schedule. We were driving home from church after it left. We had closed down on Saturday night. We were driving home from my church, and my wife looked at me and said, "What if we sold everything and went?" That's why I'm here today. It impacted me that much that we get rid of anything we needed to be a part of this move of God. And it's taken us all over the country, other states, other cities here in Indiana. And so I'll share that story more later as we move on. You can ask questions. But in respect for time, I do want to go through what does it look like? What does a week look like? What did that original week look like? What did my week look like in Bloomington? Basically what happens is once we figure out if this is going to happen in Martinsville, Morgan County, and we'll figure that kind of stuff out later. We'll have prep trips, we'll do things to build up, to get the word out, to we'll be in other churches, we'll visit, we'll speak on Wednesday nights, whatever it takes. But we'll start on a Sunday night, probably like a 6 o'clock service. We'll all come together. We'll need one church that's going to host us, or one venue that'll host us, that can hold however many people we think is going to be here. And that's just, we have no idea, but we leave that to the Lord. So there'll be one place, a central location that we gather. The reason that's important is we need to be able to invite people, and they need to be stable. And so we know that we're going to meet on a Sunday night there, and then Monday morning we're going to meet there for prayer time. And our schedule will be this every day. 7 o'clock we're going to meet and pray. Everybody comes together, we meet and pray. At 8 o'clock we then do breakfast. We eat breakfast together. One of the coolest things about this is sitting across the table from one another. That's where the barriers and things that we have built up between us as far as denomination is concerned are tore down. Because we realize that we're allies, we're not enemies. And it's all over a table. So at 8 o'clock we eat breakfast with one another. At 9 o'clock we start training. And you guys all have this on your desk or on your table. Feel free to take these wristbands, the Bibles. We're going to train every person that shows up how to use this. Now we realize that there's a lot of us in this room that feel like we could do a pretty good job evangelizing. We can go out and talk to somebody about the Lord. I'm going to tell you right now, I grew up in church. I'm 37 years old, and I've been in church my whole life. Until I saw this, I never felt like I could go and share my faith with anybody. I grew up in it. I had been to Sunday schools, youth functions, workshops, anything you can think of, and all I ever heard was, you need to be sharing your faith, but nobody told me how. And that's what we train. We actually train people on how to use this, how to share their faith. It's very simple. It's a wristband. We go out, we open up. The first question we teach them how to do is we say, how can I pray for you? I can tell you right now, I've been doing this since 2015, and I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've actually been turned down to pray with somebody. Most people in our country will accept that, because it's not about my church, it's not about my denomination. I care about them. And then we work into this. But we'll actually train people how to use this. Most people will recognize it as the Romans Road. If you grew up in any kind of church, it's Romans Road with an Ephesians verse. But we'll go over that. You can ask questions on that later. We do that from about 9 o'clock to about 9:30. At 9:30, then that's when we break up into teams. We don't go out by ourselves. We don't go out in one. We go out in teams. And here's why. The first 5 times I ever went out on the street, I didn't say a word to anybody. I just went to support the team. I didn't know what I was doing. And that's where the people that come in from out of town, that's where they're key. They are key, because what they're going to do is they're going to train the people in your churches how to do this. Now it's taking some of the weight off of you as pastors. It's not the church pointing at you saying, do your job. It's saying, hey, I realize I have a job, and I can now do that job. I'm one of them. And now I'm a full-time missionary. I know that my job is to go out and share the gospel. And so those people, we paired up in teams of 3 or 4 men and women, because we want to keep it all together. So if we're approaching a woman out on the street, we want a woman on our team. We don't want a couple of big ugly dudes approaching her. Does that make sense? So we go out in teams of 3 or 4, and from about 9:30 to about noon, they're out on our streets. And here's one of the cool things, is we always go to the church first. And so what's going to happen is every church in this county will be mapped out, and we'll send a team there in the morning. There'll be teams, there'll be maps, so we can give direction. And they're going to go and they're going to bless all the churches in the community just with prayer. Hey, this is Revive Indiana. We want to bless you with prayer this morning. What this does is this kind of breaks that ice for people that are nervous. You know, I don't know, can I go talk to somebody? This is going to break the ice. You're going to church, people. That makes sense? So in the morning we go to church. At noontime we come back, and here's where the fun begins. This is our favorite time of day, and I'm sure Gordy, this is one of his favorite time of day too. Noontime. At 12 o'clock we gather, we do some worship and testimonies. And this is where it's fun, because I can't tell you how many stories I've seen of literally, I've seen people shaking. They're so scared to go out on the street. But the Lord gets a hold of them when they just make themselves available. They go out and they share their faith with somebody for the first time. And they come back and they're weeping in tears, because they're like, God, use me to touch somebody today. And they never stop. I can name at least 5 right now that I've personally been a part of, where they never shared their faith. They were just like me. They were 30, 40 years old, never shared their faith with somebody. And they go out one time on a team of 3 to 4. They build their confidence. The team takes care of them. They share their faith with somebody. Somebody gets radically changed for the Lord, and they come back, and they're probably more changed than the person they shared with. So from noontime, from 12 to 1, we do testimonies. And then at 1 o'clock, guess what we do? We eat lunch. This is one of the only ministries I know that eats 3 times a day. It's glorious. So, but we eat lunch from 1 to 2. At 2 o'clock, guess what? We train again, because there's going to be people that can't come in the morning, but they can come in the afternoon. So we do another training. We train them how to use the wristband and Bible, how to work together as a team, how to approach people. We don't have it figured out, but we've done this enough that we have some tips and some tools that we can use to help break that ice and break those barriers and send people out with confidence. And so from about 2:30, we break back up into teams and we send them back. But this time they're actually going out to search for people. We give them maps to give them in areas, but they're going out to search for people. And they're just praying, Lord, put something in their path. Highlight them something. It doesn't matter how you get a hold of, how you get in front of somebody, but they're praying about it and they're going. And then they come back at 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock we eat dinner. Again, it's fellowship around the meal table. It's breaking down the walls. And then we usually probably do a service from about 6:30 to about 8:30, where we'll do some worship, we'll do some discipleship. Here's what's really cool is I haven't even talked about the discipleship. This is where the discipleship comes in. We don't want to just send people out and just get people to say yes to Jesus. We can do that, right? We can do that. But the key is Matthew 28 says, go and make disciples. So the only way our churches are going to grow is if people go out and say yes to Jesus. Now we got to capture their information. We can't just leave them out there on the street to just wither and die. And so when we're on a team, when we share with somebody and they say yes, maybe they make a commitment to the Lord, maybe they don't, maybe they just want to know more. Maybe they're just, I want to know more about this, but I'm not there yet. We gathered their information. We have a whole system that will be given to you to capture this for the county. And it's their name, their telephone number, their emails, whatever information they'll give us. Information about what they pray for, what the conversation was, how far through the Bible did you go. And then we print it out at night. And during that night service, we actually make a call for the people that are there. And we'll give the numbers for the day. Hey, we sent out this many teams, this many people said yes, this many people want discipleship. It's long-term discipleship. We'll make the call and we'll say, if this is you, stand up, come back, and we'll train you. Again, we don't want to just give this to you and say, figure it out. We want to walk beside you. This is about coming along beside you. That's all it is. And so we'll train those that want to. Because again, just like me, sharing my faith, I was never trained. Most of the people in our churches have never walked anybody through a long-term Bible study. They don't know where to begin. And so that's where this comes in. We'll train them. We'll give them some of those tips and those tools to use to meet these people that are paired up, that they're getting paired up with. We pair men and men, women and women. What's really cool is the Lord works in this so many ways. Gordy's got hundreds of stories, I'm sure. I've got a bunch of them. Some of the information that's printed out, this is what's really cool, is a guy will walk up and he'll be like, man, I think I'm supposed to do a Bible study with somebody, but I don't know who. And he'll look down the sheet and here's some of the information. One of the coolest ones was a guy put his college down, where he went to college. I have no idea why that was on the sheet, but he put his college down, and this guy walks up and says, I went to that college. They immediately had a connection that they can now connect with through the college into the Lord, because they had a connection. Maybe it's a death, or there's life circumstances that's how they get matched up. But we'll actually call them, we'll train them, and then they get this. They get two of these. One for them, one for their disciple. And now, that's where the church starts to grow. Because now they're not just saying yes to the Lord, they're actually going through a long-term discipleship. This is 52 Bible stories. It's really simple. It's 26 out of the Old Testament, 26 out of the New Testament. And here's how it works. Every single story is geared to train that new disciple to share their faith through that story. And so now we're training the new people, those new babies in Christ, to already be evangelistic. We don't have to break those old habits and those old barriers like we have. We're training them up to be evangelistic from day one. So that's at night from about 6:30 to 8:30, somewhere in there. We can figure out details. That night service changes in every city based on what the city needs and can handle, and child care and things like that. And so that's our schedule. From 7 to 8 we pray, from 8 to 9 breakfast, from 9 to 9:30 we train, 9:30 to 12 we go out on the street, 12 to 1 is testimonies, 1 to 2 is lunch, 2 to 2:30 is training, 2:30 to 5 is out on the street, dinner at 5:30, and then service at 9. And we'll do that Monday through Saturday, or whatever we determine. We've done cities that are 3 or 4 days. We've done them where they're 7 days. But the day schedule stays the same. It'll determine the number of days based on what the community figures it wants to do. Does that make sense? I feel like when we come here, I feel like Gordy and I would like to fire those information at you really fast. But we want to make sure you have all the material, all the information, and then you guys can start asking questions. And so I'm just going to throw it open. If you have questions, if you think of something, Gordy and I are here. If you're having the question, somebody else probably has the same question, so don't hesitate to throw something out there.
So after you leave, or at the end of the 5 or 10 or however many days it turns out to be, how are these people bonded into local bodies of believers? What's the strategy there?
Okay, so the people that are actually walking with them are the locals. It's the local people that are part of it that are actually taking the disciples. It's not the out-of-towners. I can't disciple somebody in Martinsville. Gordy can't disciple somebody in Martinsville. That's where the local body has to step up. Just like the local body has to step up and be trained to go out on the street, they have to step up and say, hey, you know what? I can't go out on the street every day, and this is where we get a lot of it. And Gordy can attest this. We have a lot of people that say, I can't go out and evangelize with you, but I can do a disciple maker once a week. And so you've got people that come at night and say, hey, I'll be a disciple maker. Maybe that's their gift. Maybe they're not good at breaking that ice, but once that ice has been broken, they're good at one-on-one relationship. So it's the local believers that are doing this.
Right, get that part, but then how is it like if somebody from my church is doing that, they kind of guide them. So how do you guide them into the local churches for the long-term connection with the local bodies of believers? What's that work? How do they get from this?
They'll just follow whoever's
Yeah,
with them, that's,
Basically, whoever the local person
exactly,
is,
and
they'll
that's why
probably
it's
end
not
up
a
in that
competition.
church.
You want your church to grow, get disciple makers.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
it
what
is.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
find out.
We will not, the interactions that we have on the street, we don't push any church.
I understand that.
We let the disciple makers meet with them one-on-one, so they usually will follow the disciple makers.
So that's the plan.
Yep.
People in the churches.
Yes. Now, we have heard people, and this is where it's not a competition. You might meet a disciple maker, and you might realize that your church just doesn't fit right.
Exactly.
But you now know the other churches that were involved, and you say, hey, that church over there, that fits you better than my church. And so that's where it's the community as a whole that's growing. It's not just my little side of it. Make sense? Now, one thing that we didn't talk about, and Gordy talked about, this isn't just an event. I'm going to tell you right now that we will push from day one that this keep going after we leave. This is just to get you going. This is like a jump start.
Catalyst.
Yes, it's a catalyst. And I can tell you right now, in every city, since that original tent in Dallas, there are teams of people that still do this 10 years later. And I can tell you in every city in Indiana that we've been to, it's still going after we leave. In some way, shape, or form. It looks different in every city. We have cities that still meet once a week. We have cities that meet once a month. We have cities that meet once a quarter. But they have still, after that initial coming together as one body in Christ in the community, they're still going today. In some way, shape, or form. And so we will begin to work with you guys and the local pastors and leaders to build a team to keep that going. Because it's not about the event. It's not about the build up to it. It's about the long haul for the kingdom. So, listen.
Tell us a little about that initial contact when these people go out to the community or the county. They're knocking on doors. They're just starting conversations on the street. I'm thinking, you mentioned going into the Chrysler plant in Pocono. People are working. They're busy. Most of us, maybe all of us, have had evangelism. People come to our homes, maybe knock on the door, and want to talk to us. Sometimes it's convenient, sometimes it's a real distraction, and it's not a good situation. How does that, for those contacts,
First off, we believe that if we look at Jesus' life, he went to 3 places. He went to open air, marketplace, and house to house. Okay? So that's what we train on. We train on open air, parks, recreation places, marketplace, places of business, and then door to door, which everybody knows that door to door is the hardest one. Door knocking. I can tell you with our approach, the approach that it's more of a casual passing. We meet somebody, hey, how can I pray for you? It's a lot harder knocking on a door than it is when you're walking down the sidewalk past somebody. But we train on discerning some of those things that you're talking about how, like if your team decides that they're going to go into a marketplace, the first thing we train them to do is go to the manager of that store and ask for permission. If the manager says no, then we say thank you very much, you have a blessed day, and we exit. And I can tell you right now, if we have teams or people that are not adhering to that, we take care of it. Because we can't have that. That's not Christ-like. Exactly. It's not being Jesus to somebody. But we train them how to go in, how to talk, how to bless that business, even if they say no. Especially in the marketplace, if they go in, we train and tell people, like, if you're going to go into a store, you buy something. You bless that business before you ever ask her a question. Those types of things, those discerning things, to let some of those barriers and those guards that are up to be broken down before we ever get there. Does that answer your question? Does that kind of explain a little bit? Good. And then we have tips and things that we've learned and stories. I mean, most of what we share is all through stories and experience. We've done it in somewhere, some way, and so we're sharing. This worked here, it didn't work there. Those types of things.
44 words.
Yeah. So one of the things that one of our initial teachings and a lot of our teachings at night would be 4 words. We teach people that this is how we want to do. We want to love, listen, discern, and respond. If we go out and we love people as we go out on teams, we've already won. But we love them first. We talk about how do we love somebody that we don't know? How do we, smiling, waving, saying hello, those types of things. How do we love somebody? We love on the person first. And then we listen to their story. That's the key. We listen to their story. Too many times we've gone out and we've said, I love you, now listen to my story. Exactly. You listen to their story, and I'll tell just a quick story. Listen, I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We went into a Target, and it was a rainy day. We asked permission. The manager said yes. He said, but if it stops my business, you're out of here. I said, no, sir, that's not what we want to do. He let me pray for him, bless him. We were walking down the aisle. I saw this older lady in the toy aisle, and I was with somebody. She'd never been out before. We went in. We were a team of 4, 2 guys, 2 girls, and we split up. So there was a guy and a girl, and we circled the target. That's kind of what we did. And this girl had never been out before, and this is where it gets key. I saw this lady. I said, "There's the person we need to talk to." The Lord just was really pulling me to her. I went up and I asked this question. I said, "Are you buying that toy for yourself or someone else?" And for the next 30 minutes, she poured her life out to me. I didn't say another word because I loved her and I wanted to listen to her. My partner that was with me, she had no clue what to do. She was like, what do we do? Do we see? No, I was like, shh. Listen to her. She finally got done after 30 minutes of pouring her life out to me, and she said, I finally got to ask the question, how can I pray for you? I hadn't even asked if I could pray for her yet. And she looked at me and she started crying and she said, I told you things I can't tell my church. Because I was willing to listen to her. So we love people, we listen to their story. And then we discern. We need to know how to react. Do we share the wristband? Do we share a Bible? Maybe we don't. Maybe it's not time for that. Maybe it's time to push a little more. We discern through the Spirit working inside of us what our next step is. And then we actually respond. We actually have to do something with whatever the Spirit tells us to do. So that's what we train on, those 4 words. Love, listen, discern, respond, and then we send them out. Make sense?
One of the lead-ins that we do, and that's why all of us carry a wristband, so we've always got a wristband. So when we say, can I pray for you, or how can I pray for you, that's what we do. And we just pray for whatever they want. And then we just pull off a wristband and say, can I give this to you? Just as a reminder that somebody prayed for you. And when we're walking out there, we don't even have this in our hand. It's in our purse, it's in our back pocket. This isn't the project. They are. They're our purpose. And however far we get with them, hallelujah. But we've had people who, they get hit one day, nothing. Somebody hits them the next day and they're going, oh. I've seen people in Walmart that say, I see you got a wristband. How's that working for you? Just like that. And pretty soon, we had people say, somebody come up to them the 3rd time and go, you know what, you guys are serious. You love it. They want to pray. And we've seen that happen. It's just crazy.
When we send the teams out, we give them a bag of Bibles and wristbands. So they have these with them. Yes, we all know that if you saw somebody walking down the street with a Bible right here in their chest, you can turn around and And it's like Forty said, it's amazing how many times, how many touches. You know, average, one thing, and you'll hear us train on this a lot, it takes the average person 16 times of hearing Jesus before they say yes. That's a true statistic. Like, you can go and look it up. How many times does it take people hearing Jesus? And so we don't know when we go out on the street if I'm the first one or if I'm number 15 or 16. That's the discerning part. That's the listening. That's the loving them to know how far are we going to go. And it is funny, in a week, you might hear a story on day one about meeting somebody and they said no, they won't listen to me. And then if you pay real close attention, especially in smaller towns like we're here, by the end of the week, that person's been touched 2 or 3 times. And here's what's really cool. This is why we use this tool and not anybody else's tool. This is universal. This crosses all denominations. This isn't my church. And guess what happens? Every team is different. We go out and every day, we don't get on the same team of 3 or 4. We mix it up. But every team has the same message. And so Monday they hear one message, Tuesday they hear the same message, Wednesday they hear the same message, Thursday the same message, Friday, Saturday. And finally they're like, you guys are all saying the same dang thing, I say yes. You know, because we're saying the same message. This isn't saying that we're perfect in any way. Don't think that. All this is to do is be a bridge amongst our denominations, amongst our churches, to say, yes, we can unite under the banner of Jesus and go out and share Jesus. That's all this is. We're not perfect by any means, but that's why we use this. It's not a denominational track. Make sense? Yes, sir.
Where does the funding come from for materials such as this?
It's free.
Well,
I heard Pastor Gordy said
I heard that, but it has to come from somewhere.
it was paid for by donors somewhere. Yes. We will not ask you for money.
And we won't take up offerings.
And we won't take up offerings. Now, you're saying, okay, but there is a cost somewhere, right? We heard we eat 3 meals a day. Those meals have to come from somewhere. That's usually a church, group of people saying that I'll supply that for the day. You know, we haven't gotten into a whole lot of details. I do want to respect you guys' time. I can talk about this all day. That's what I'm here for. But usually on Monday, we have one host. One thing that I'll kind of throw out there with that. Materials don't cost you a penny. If Morgan County, Martinsville says, yes, we want to be another Star City, your name gets put on that pallet of Bibles up in the middle there and it'll be shipped to you. No questions asked. The only thing that we will do is that we'll put a boot on the table and it'll have a small sign about this big that says, give as you feel blessed, or whatever.
Usually it's on food too.
Yeah, usually it's on food too.
And that's,
But
yeah.
we have one host, and then lunchtime we meet at a different church every day. So we'll meet at the same place morning and night, and then Monday at lunch we'll meet at another church here in town. Tuesday we'll meet at a different church. Wednesday, just see how that goes. So we have one host, 6 lunches, and then we have supporting churches that, you know, there's a lot of churches that might be involved or want to be involved, but they say, hey, we're not big enough to host, and we don't have the money because we're a little small country church, but they might be able to come together, 2 or 3 of them, and provide a meal, or, you know, those types of things. We'll work through that. But, so that's one way that it does cost you something. The other thing is that you heard people coming in from out of town. We're going to need housing. We don't get hotels. We actually want to stay with you guys. We want to be a part of your lives. That's part of coming along beside you. We want to get to know you. But you don't have to feed them because we eat 3 meals a day. You heard our schedule. We're gone we start at 7 and we go to almost 9. They need a bed and a shower. A couch and a shower. That's all they need. You won't even see them hardly. That's another way that there is a cost involved. And then time. If we show up, we don't want just the out-of-towners being a part of this. We want your churches, we want your bodies to be a part of this, because the whole point is to equip you guys to do it. By the end of the week, we want you guys running this thing and we're leaving.
Well, see, my minister here, Kevin, has had a few sermons over the year where he has mentioned it costs to be a Christian.
Yeah,
If you think that's not true, you're wrong.
absolutely.
But there is some type of cost, so that's why I'm
Yeah.
worrying about, you know, this
We
might be
will
free
not-
to us, but it's
we
not
will-
free. Somebody pays for it.
Somebody paid for it, you are right. But somebody paid for it because they believed
Right.
that it needed to keep going.
Let me just say, we went down to Dallas, Texas. He did revive Dallas, Fort Worth. Fairly big city.
7 million.
They ordered 500,000 Bibles. And we've had people, I can tell you up in our area, there was a man who I don't have any idea what his name is. He called Kyle up one day, during the 52 days, he said, I want you to stop over at my house, and he said, you better bring a vehicle.
Said pickup truck.
He got there, he took his dad along, and this guy took him in the basement. Showed him his desk, and he had silver bars and gold bars laid out across his desk. He said, I've been keeping this for my retirement. God spoke to me and said, this is where it goes, so I want you guys to load that up. And they loaded it up and put it in the back of the truck, and it actually was heavy enough that it made the back end of the truck go down. So that's what God wants to do. God is more interested in seeing his kingdom work. Nothing's free, but this almost becomes pay it forward. So people will give, but they'll also want to do more because there's more there. And so we're willing to see, because it took somebody to bring it. And so there's always somebody bringing it, and then they get excited, and then they want to go further with it. That's how it works. So,
But we won't ask you for it.
no.
And we won't preach it, and we won't pass a basket. Actually, I've been doing this since 2015, and I've only seen a basket passed once, and it wasn't us, it was one of the locals saying, guys, these guys need money because they can pay payroll.
I tried to get them taken off
Yeah.
one time, even lined it up, put ushers in, it was during the 52 days, and just before the service, Kyle sends a guy out and goes,
Yep.
not do it.
So we're not gonna do it, we're not gonna do it during the week or the time. We just won't.
So there's no hidden agenda. You wanna see Martinsville touched with the gospel? I've never seen anything like it in my life, and that's why I'm here. I've driven from my house to Evansville 6 hours. I've been down to Du Bois County, down way south down there. All over the state. I put up 15,000 miles in 2016, just running the state. It's worth it.
One other question, and don't take this the wrong way, but it sounds like a challenge when I say it. But, why is this such a well-kept secret?
How do you mean?
Never heard of it. See nothing in the media, the news coverage.
Google it, it's
And-
there.
And
It's there,
I'm not.
you gotta get on the internet, just Google some of this stuff,
Oh,
it's
okay,
there,
okay.
believe me.
Just like that, like for us up there?
I would think.
It was on the front page of the paper when 10,000 people were marching down the street of Goshen, and we had TV channels, other people.
I would
To
hope
speak to
so.
that though,
I would hope so.
south of Indianapolis, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's been hard for life. South of Indy has been hard. North of Indy, almost any town you go to has been touched in some way, shape, or form, and then you can find people that have heard about it.
The
But for
east-
something,
The
there's
east line over
very-
there, because we've been in Richmond, we've been in probably 5 counties all the way up to Steuben County, Angola up there in the corner. So on the east side, and then we've done a couple on the west side, but, yeah, and so right here there hasn't been.
Communities,
I don't know the answer to that. We don't have an answer for it. I mean, we've done something, we did Evansville, let's see, so south of Indy, we got Terre Haute that was hit, we got Bloomington that was hit, we got Sullivan, Du Bois County, Jasper, and then Evansville. But for some reason, once we get south of that Indy, it's like hitting a wall.
And we prepped one city, and then
Yeah.
they pulled out.
We were gonna do Bartholomew County, Columbus.
And we
We
said,
were
"Fine."
prepping and it just fell through. It was
where
nothing worked.
I was kind of, where Raymond's kind of taking that thought was, is it all going out to the marketplace, to the open air, to the homes, and that's where people hear about it, or is there promotion, is there some?
Depends on the county.
Sharing of information that, hey, this is happening, this is coming, because
Yeah.
I guess in my little world, I've.
Well, here's, just what we said, we will come back here as many times as you want us to for prep trips, pastors meetings. If now that you know, is there another pastor that you would say, hey, this sounds crazy, would you come? We could have 2 or 3 pastors meetings before we even start, and then it would be up to you guys to come up with a date. And then we start having training meetings and then plan our come and see nights when even your churches. But you're the ones who are gonna announce it in your churches and say, here's what's gonna happen, and this is what we're excited about. Show a few videos on your screens at church and see what happens. They're there by the hundreds.
But as that progresses, as far as getting out to the community, it is up to you guys to share it. But we also have press releases we can get out in the newspaper, you know, it depends on what the community wants to do. We don't determine anything from Time to Revive. The only thing we do is we come along, we present you with the information. Once you guys say yes or no, then we start walking, and it depends on what the community, every community is different. I mean, we've had communities that put up billboards on 37, we've had, newspaper articles, whatever.
Those tools are there.
We have those tools available. It's
In your-
determined by the community.
In your area, if we'll just work this, you can make it well known by the time it gets here. Up in our area with 52s, I want to just tell you just another little side note. Even the kids took it to their schools. We had 12 public schools in our county and 1 outside the county that all gave excused absences to students 1 day a week if they wanted to come and be with Revive for a day. And one Wednesday morning, we had over 600 high school students that joined 200 other people to make 400 groups that went out in a February meeting, going out into the streets. And it changes people. It absolutely changes people. That's why we're here. I don't have to tell you, we're not selling you anything. And we don't have to tell you what it might do. I've watched 18 cities in Indiana.
What's the steps between this meeting and a group or a date to launch?
They're different every city. I'll give you a general structure. What I would say is the people that are here, I have your contact information. I can share that with all of you. You guys get together and say, you guys are kind of going to be the core. You're the initial people that have heard it. You're going to say, I think we should do this, or whatever, or however, and then have another pastor meeting where each of you invites at least one. Now you have a pastor meeting of 16 or 20 instead of 8 or 9. And then by that point, then we can start talking about, okay, is this a go? Is this not a go? Is this, and start putting some structure. But we would have at least one more pastor meeting. Then that would probably be a meeting where we say yes or no to Revive Martinsville. At that point, then we would start laying out schedule for how many times do we want to come back to prep. Like, we want to have, what we call a come and see is usually like a Sunday night where we gather at one church, and maybe it's not the whole community, but you say, okay, I'll host a come and see, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 churches that come to that one church for Sunday night service. It'll probably be where we kind of lay out a lot of the information that we laid out here. We start laying that out to your body and start saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is kind of the history. This is how it got here. We show some of those videos that we've talked about that really show it in action out on the street. And then we determine how many of those we need. Do we need, some cities do 2, we've done 3, done 4. It really depends on what the date, like if we do a pastor meeting and we say yes, and then we set a date, it depends on how long we have there, on how much can be accomplished. Because you also don't want to overdo it and do 7 or 8 prep come and sees on a Sunday night, and then you've already got your body, and they're like, well, I don't need to come to the 7-day or whatever it is. I would say 2 to 3 come and sees where we come, and probably, maybe a month apart, maybe 3 weeks apart. where we'd have a come and see on a Sunday, and then 2 to 3 weeks later, no more than 4, you have another one, and then you start. So you're talking maybe 3 or 4 months from the time we say yes to the time we actually do it.
Another thing that it was interesting to me, I was out in Ohio, Revival, Ohio, and, was meeting at a lunch location. And the Lord just put it on my heart and said, you're not gonna go out on team this afternoon. I just want you to walk. And so I figured out where our evening church was, and get the phone out, Google it, and realized it's about 3.5 miles, and said, I can walk that. So I decided it would take me right through the heart of their city. And so I decided to walk it. And didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt like I was looking for something, so I just kept my eyes open, paying attention. I didn't talk to one person on the way. But what I did notice was that as I was walking down Main Street, I was drawn to certain things in certain places. And so I got back in time, we had the pastor's meeting there at a Baptist church in Shelby County. And it didn't dawn on me until all of a sudden, the one guy called me and he said, what do you, just tell him what you perceived today. I said, here's, and it was just like a boom to me, just one of those. We drive around our cities. And when we drive around our cities, we see our streets and we see our destinations. But we seldom walk around our cities. He said, when you drive, you see cars, but when you walk, you see people. And he said, we've lost touch with people. And it's easy to lose touch with people in your own city, even as those who are the caregivers. And look, if they're going to be saved here in Martinsville, who's going to do it? This is the team right here. And so you've got the impetus to do this. But if we don't see our city for what it is, and that's what I noticed then. I was drawn into several areas and going, I wish I had time. I'd love to go to that place right now. But what he's saying is, but if you'd have driven past, you wouldn't even have seen the place. That was a big eye-opener to me.
Timing, though, we can work on timing. I mean, timing, I'll tell you right now, one of the coolest things that drew me to Time to Revive is it's probably one of the most flexible organizations you will ever work with in your entire life. Like literally, we will jump through hoops to make a deadline, or we will extend way past something because we feel the Holy Spirit's leading us. So timing, in all honesty, we don't care about timing from our perspective. We want it to work from your perspective.
We also know you're pressed for time, so I'll just tell you, one of the neatest things is they have an organization that is unbelievable, in Time to Revive. And so every time that you're going to go out on a team, you will actually go to Revive Hub, which is a thing, and they will have your county in here, and every team will list itself as a team on that, and we'll be able to tell that that team is out, and when you check back in, you're checked back in. It's also a safety thing, and then it's also one that team met that person and they put it in. There's people who stay back and pray, and you can text in prayer requests into the people who are staying at the church to pray. All this stuff is already in the system, and what we bring is missionaries like Jason, who some of them administrate, some are logistics, some are covering the prayer teams, all kinds of different roles that they play, and all this just comes up and shows up to you.
And the whole point of that is to train your community to keep it going forward. Our model inside of Time to Revive is model, assist, watch, and lead. We want to come and model it for you. Every single role, from prayer to administration to whatever, we want to model it. Then we want to assist somebody who wants to carry it forward. And then we model, assist, then we want to watch them after we've showed them, and then we leave, and now they're equipped to do exactly what I do, or exactly what Gordy does, or whatever it is. And so we want to train anybody and everybody that wants to be a part of this so that it keeps going forward.
I got one more story and then I'm going to quit. Promise.
He's hard to stop.
I am a pastor of a non-denominational church. One of my very, very close friends now is a Baptist minister in our area. We met through Revive. And I don't know what it was from the very beginning, but something just cemented us. we ended up having a group of 5 pastors who just became, we are bosom buddies. I mean, tell you, our wives get together. It's a United Methodist pastor, Fred. It was Phil, the Baptist pastor. It was Jay, a Mennonite pastor. It was me, and it was Tom, First Brethren in Appanee. But Pastor Phil, some of you might have heard about this. The year after Revive, there was a murder in Indianapolis of a pastor's wife. I don't know if any of you have heard that. That's Pastor Phil's daughter. That's my dear friend's daughter. And her husband, they had just come to Indianapolis to start a church. And Pastor Phil, I mean, Revive took him way out of his comfort zone. I'll just tell you, he openly says it, but man, has he been something. But we met several months after his daughter's death. And he said, even in that, he said, I don't know how I would have made it if I didn't have you guys. This took me through places in my life that I don't know how. He said, and without Revive, I wouldn't know any of you. And what I'm telling you that is because we already have our ideas of who fits together, who doesn't, and all the church stuff. I want to tell you, when it comes to this thing, that is all just bunk to me. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but when it comes to watching God do the gospel in your city, and you see the baptisms on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and you see them, and all people want to do is cheer God, then you're going, man, where has this been? And I watched it in city after city, and state after state, and I got to tell you, God still knows how to work His gospel. We have to learn it.
People are still dying, they're going to do funerals.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, and I'm hanging around, worrying around for a few more minutes. You guys want to ask any questions, feel free to. I want to let you go, be respectful of your time. So, you guys can keep this stuff on the table, that's yours. Flip through it. If you have questions, you can holler, you can get a hold of this. And I'll just send an email out to all of you guys. That way you have everybody that was here. It'll just be a list of who was here and their contact. That way you guys can begin talking to one another. Those kind of things.
Thank you so much, Jason.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys for coming.
Coffee shop to the food if you want some more.
Hey, how are you doing? I saw you the other day at Wendy's.
Oh, okay.
With your family, your wife, and maybe whatever. How's Ryan doing?
Okay.
Okay, going to preliminary. Thank you. I'll take it. Bless you. Thanks for letting me come today.
Yeah.